Jacob lived 70 years in the land of Canaan with his father Isaac. He then went north for 20 years to Haran, where he gained 4 wives, 11 sons and 1 daughter, returned to the land of Canaan, where his 12th son was born, but his dear wife Rachel passed away in childbirth. Jacob loved his son Joseph more than his other sons, and that love generated jealousy among the other brothers, who could not speak peaceably with him. And so when they had the opportunity, they sold him as a slave to Egypt. And 20 years later, he is governor of Egypt. There is a huge famine over Egypt and Canaan, and Jacob brings the children of Israel to live under Joseph's patronage in Egypt. Now Jacob has lived in Egypt for 17 years, and as he approaches death, he has blessed each of his sons, because he knows God has a great plan for the nation, his children, and he has made Joseph swear that Joseph will arrange for Jacob to be buried back in the land of Canaan, because that is the land God has promised to give their descendants. After he had blessed the children, he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephraim the Hittite as a possession for a burial place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is there were purchased from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed, and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Then Joseph fell on his father's face, and wept over him, and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Now when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favour in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Behold, I am dying. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please, let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the house of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks, and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with them both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great gathering. Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore its name was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephraim the Hittite, as property for a burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers, and all who went up with him to bury his father. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we've read of the burial of Jacob. Jacob's statement was, "It is time I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave which is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite." This expression, "gathered to my people," was used of Abraham, of Isaac, of Ishmael, and it clearly portrays that death is not the end, but that God's people are gathered together in death, in a place of security. And so when we come to the New Testament, Jesus tells us in Luke 16 of the death of a poor beggar who the angels gathered to Abraham's bosom. He was gathered to the same place. But there was a rich man. The beggar begged at the rich man's gate, but the rich man obviously had no compassion for the beggar he walked past every day, whose only friends were the dogs that licked his sores. This rich man, when he died, was not gathered to Abraham's bosom, but left in a place where he was tormented. He was not one who in life exercised faith and dependence on God. He had this world's goods. What need did he have of God? Some today have charged that God is just a crutch for the weak, and that we don't need God, so we should not have God. Well, the psalmist declared that we all need God because no man is rich enough to pay a ransom for his soul. We need one to pay that ransom for us, for we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And the Scriptures identify the Lord Jesus as the one who died in our place, who redeemed us, who ransomed us by his death, the just for we the unjust, that he might bring us to God. And in the hours before Jesus died, he declared to the thief who believed in him that today you will be with me in paradise, Abraham's bosom, who's also called paradise. So this was the understanding that Jacob had. As he faced death, he looked forward to being gathered together with his people, with Abraham and Isaac. The Sadducees in Jesus' day liked only to read the books of Moses and did not believe in resurrection, but they obviously had not read this verse, gathered to their people. For Jesus quoted from Moses to say that God is the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, he is the God of the living. But the body stays on earth. Jacob's body, though, as a sign, was to be buried where Abraham and Isaac were buried, in the field that Abraham bought in Canaan. It was kind of a seed planted in the ground concerning the promise God had given that after 400 years Abraham's descendants would occupy the land. The standing that Joseph had, and therefore Jacob had, is indicated by the size of this honour given to Jacob at his death by the Egyptians. 70 days of official mourning, 40 days required for his embalming, and then a large company of all the adult descendants of Jacob and many Egyptians, the important people, going to bury him in the land of Canaan, and observing another 7 days of mourning when they get to Canaan. So there was great love for Jacob. Why? Why was he not just like so many these days, an old man that hardly anyone turns up at the funeral because nobody knows him? Well, it is because he loved God, and his righteousness spoke of God. And this was known to not only the Israelites, but by all the Egyptians. And so the children of Israel returned to Egypt until the day that the Lord shall take them and return them to Canaan as well.